everyone, so this is the supplemental video to week 10 of the Frankenstank League. It's probably going to be a bunch of dry, boring numbers, so if that's not your thing, that's why they're not in the main video. I wanted to take a very deep dive into the numbers, my interpretation of them, what they mean for you, your team, and even the overall health of the league. Though, I am giving a full disclaimer at the beginning of this video. We are not toilets to title staff. We are merely players in the league who maybe have a little too much time on our hands. Opinions expressed here are my own and do not reflect any official positions by toilets to titles. Basically, if we tell you something that's wrong, we're not liable and they aren't liable either. You are responsible for doing your own research to come to your own conclusions. All that said, I'm a huge numbers and spreadsheet dork, and I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think what we're going to say is right. First, let's talk cut lines. People want to know, what are your chances of getting in the playoffs? Looking at the current trend, a single 6-4 team would be in today on record, right? This is after all the 8 highest point scorers are already in, all of these guys here. And there is the one team here at 5-5 that actually record-wise wouldn't be good enough, but obviously has enough points. Last week, same criteria. It was almost a clean cut at 6-3 with the bottom one being out. Though there were a few other teams like Kraken and Dracula and Jason Voorhees that are all in on points, whose record themselves was not good enough. Quite a few of the top players actually lost this week. 5 of the 8 teams who were leading divisions lost in week 10. In fact, 13 teams who right now are in the playoffs actually lost. This means those wins had to go somewhere, and somewhere is mostly near the playoff bubble. The top 16 teams not currently in the playoffs went a combined 12-4 this week. This is going to lead to keeping the cut line artificially inflated. One better way to help us determine where the actual cutoff is to figure out the average number of wins a playoff team has. In week 9, it was 6.94. And in week 10, it's exactly 7.5. This means it went up approximately 0.54 wins. I think this number is a tad bit low and represents more top seeds losing, but I think about 0.6 would be correct on average moving forward. So pushing out 3 weeks from now, the 7.5 wins would go to 9.3 wins. With week 9's cut line being at exactly 6 wins and week 7's cut line being at 7 wins plus 1, 6-4, I think it's fair to assume that the cut line in the end will be approximately 80 to 90% of the average number of wins. That puts the cut line approximately 7.5 to 8.4 wins, with 7.9 being average. So more than likely, most everyone that has 8 wins should be in, with maybe one exception if it ends up on the very rigid end, and going down on the other end to people with 7 wins, maybe half of them. So you would need the better tie breaks. But when dashing people's hope, you really want to do it on the side of, so you're saying there's a chance. So some 7 and 6s might make it in, some might not. But there's one thing I can tell you for sure, is that there will be no one that ends up with a seed 17 through 32 that has a record of 6-7. So if you're at 7 losses, as far as getting in on record, you're out. This is everyone from place 70 and lower. That's the bottom 27. But are they really out? Hang on. Seeds 9 through 16 don't care about your record, only how many points you have. Now, 16th place currently has 2703. I think it's reasonably fair to assume that when you're attempting to catch a crowd of people versus a single person, anything more than 100 points a week to have to make up is probably too much. And even at 100, it's way pushing it and would need some truly heroic week 11 through 13s. But we want to err more on the side of, so you're saying there's a chance. So we'll say 125 points, and you have some help from Joe. Times 3, it's 375. Take it away from 2703, we get 2,428. I'm going to further maintain hope by just rounding this number down to 2,400. This doesn't mean that I think someone with 2,400 is going to get in. It just means that if you are ridiculously lucky, there is a chance, and I'm saying anything under that, there's no amount of luck in the world. Now, looking at that, The only seeds that actually applies to, or the only people that actually applies to currently, is 30th and 31st, thingy Mephistopheles. Outside of that, literally every other person that is up here in the playoffs currently is over 2,400. So now, who's under 2,400? That's at the bottom. And the answer is absolutely everyone. In fact, not only are they under, everyone there is under 2,300. So no, we had it right the first time. They're done. So even being out with the right alignment of the stars, you could still have one really, really good week. And that really, really good week could be worth $125. So even if you're dead last, keep playing it out. There is a lot of variance in fantasy football. Trust me, there is a lot of variance in fantasy football. And you only need one good week to have that high score. But as far as season long goes, I'm not done dashing hope. Sorry. Spots 55 to 69 all have 4 wins, which means they can get to as many as 7. But if you're getting in on this, it's going to take a very high tiebreaker. For reference right now, that tiebreak points for number is 2659 right there. And 2638 is out. Now, we know that there's a good chance that the 7 and 6 that comes in will likely be from someone who is higher currently and has some bad weeks. And now we're going to look at the chase totals again. This time I'm going with a much less conservative 250 points for 3 weeks because I know the line is going to keep getting harder and harder. 250 from 2659 is 2,409. Again, I'm going to round down to 2,400. So looking back at our people here, this is going to eliminate everyone but Graboid and Mumra St. Brown. Miss Babadook 2382, I will give you a snowball's chance in hell of getting in. So you're not completely out, but you will need a miracle. And honestly, even Graboid and Mumra St. Brown at their totals, it's going to be an upward climb. So I'd be pretty shocked even if they go 3-0 from here to still make the playoffs. But we're not going to call any of you three actually out. So if you're a 4 and 6 and not one of the 3 names I mentioned above, I'm sorry, but you are out. So we've now cut 39 people, leaving 57 in contention for 32 slots. Next week, we'll cut more. Now for the unofficial you're in line. Looking at the same cut lines as below, we could reasonably assume that any 9 and 1 is in because their worst record is 9 and 4. If you're 8 and 2, you're very likely in, but you're also in a tiny bit of danger if you're currently below the 32nd points for of 2659. Back to that magic number here. You can reasonably assume that of the 11 teams currently at 8 and 2, only the 8 and 2s in the top 8 have enough points to assume their total will hold even if they lost 3 in a row. So you guys there. Mind you, none of this factors in setting an illegal lineup and getting a 0, which completely screws yourself. So congrats, if you're currently leading a division, you should be good. Also, anyone really at 8 and 2 with points over 2,700 should be fine, which now will add in Wolf Predator and Von Murder into that list as well. Mind you, no one has actually secured a division. It's just kind of coincidental that all the 8 division leaders would also be locked up as wild cards just because of their high point totals. If you're not at 8 wins, you're still in jeopardy. Though honestly, I think using the same rule of catching up we used below, we see that Mick Taylor's 3032 is 327 points higher than 16th place's 2703. So having that much of a lead, again, assuming that there isn't something dumb like an illegal lineup set, I feel pretty safe adding them to the list. So top 11, there, you're good. And the bottom 39, you're out. So the 46 people in between are now fighting for 21 more playoff spots. Next, I actually want to look at heroes and the people who got them. Now, there was a lot of discussion about how good heroes could be and whether or not it was worth it to tank for one. Also, how much a role did it play based on which hero you actually got? First, how many people attempted to employ a tanking strategy and were successful with it? Now, this is definitely a little subjective, especially since people can sometimes move people around in the middle of a matchup if it looks like they're going to either win or lose. So amongst the 29 people who went 0-2, it is my opinion that 7 of them went into Week 1 with the strategy to tank based on the lineup that they set. And that's anyone who is in highlighted in yellow here. So Mephistopheles, the Hallam Humans, the Kraken, Fantasy Slasher, Mum-Ra St. Brown, the Dementors, and Son of Sam. And there were 3 more, the ones that are in black, that seemed to decide to finish tanking week 2 after they just lost week 1 outright. Those people are 4 and 6, 1 and 9, and 1 and 9, respectively. Now, let's concentrate on the 7 who actually went in with the strategy. Honestly, Son of Sam, I can't speak to. I don't what they were doing. I don't really know, because they were very clearly tanking based on their lineups. But they were one of 2 who actually didn't claim a hero, the 2 in NA here, Son of Sam and Rancor. Never had a hero. He's 4 and 6, and amongst the people who are out. Now, the Dementors and Mum-Ra St. Brown here are both 4 and 6. Fantasy Slasher and the Kraken are both 5 and 5. The Hallam Humans here, they are 6 and 4. None of those teams are actually currently in the playoffs, though obviously tanking early is a season-long strategy because you have to overcome the early 0 and 2. So it is too early to determine if that's going to work out for sure for them. The one tanking success story has been Mephistopheles. They're currently 7 and 3. And they have the best record amongst those with a hero. And presently they occupy a 31st playoff spot. But this does actually show an issue. Their 2,306 points ranks dead last amongst playoff teams. And partially because they spent the first 2 weeks intentionally losing. They have to keep winning, because if they're at the cut line near the end, as we spoke to earlier, they're likely to be on the wrong side of the bubble. Now, while those are the ones who tanked, they aren't the only ones with heroes. And a couple have done very well record-wise. Dracula is actually a top 10 at 10th place point scorer and holds the 13th seed overall. Balerion is both 16th in rank and points, and with a 6 and 4 record is still very much on the cusp of not getting in. But they also have won 6 in a row, so congratulations to them fighting back from 0-4. Additionally, Chucky's Last Stand and Team Cujo are also both 6 and 4, and they are within the top 6 of bubble teams currently, 34th and 38th. Now, 19 of the 29 teams who started 0 and 2 have been 500 or worse since week 3. So that's your cut line here. So while the hero might have been useful, I'd say mostly not. But maybe what about how big the hero was? Heroes were distributed randomly with a point value from 24 to 35. Did the better heroes do better? Not necessarily. Of the 3 jackpot 35 pointers, 2 of the 3 are in that bottom group. The Balrog and Red Rum. Chucky's Last Stand is the 3rd one. And as we've discussed, they're not currently in the playoffs, but they are on the bubble. So for the 3 playoff teams, currently, Mephistopheles had 32, Balerion had 30, and Dracula, the highest of them all, actually only had 26. So sure, scoring more is always better, but it doesn't seem to be make or break for your record. Balerion, though, is one very interesting case here. In his first 8 matches with a hero, his win-loss record would not have changed even if he had had the best or the worst hero. To be honest, it's really just too much work to figure out if it's ever actually happened to anyone that a better or worse hero would have either given them a win or a loss. I haven't really noticed it offhand so far. But in Balerion's case, having the top 35 point hero would actually have moved them from 16th place at 2703 up to 14th place with 2743. So, it would have gotten them a little more secure in a points-based invite. Conversely, if they had gotten a 24-point hero, they actually would have fallen outside the top 16, but actually trading spots, coincidentally at the moment, with Vecna, who's also 6 and 4. If they had a low-point hero, he would have gone down to, I believe, 2656. So Vecna would have slipped into the 16 slot, and they would have gone down. So they'd still be in, but not quite as securely. So it seems that while the number of heroes don't seem to matter on a week-to-week basis, the cumulative effect over 11 weeks that they're active is definitely affecting tiebreakers and the overall point totals. This is one I am definitely going to be looking at closer once the season ends and doing a deeper dive. Now, for Division Math Playoff, I found it really interesting when I saw how many teams were in from each division. 4 was the most common number, as it's really how many should be getting in on average, but there were a few anomalies. Night of the Living SBDs only have the 2 in Swamp Gator and Headless Horseman right now. Though both Team Cujo and Invisible Man are in that like top 6 bubble currently. Conversely, though, Phantom of the Porta Potty actually has 7 teams in there. This is definitely anomalous due to the number of low-end teams there are there. I mean, with 2 1-9s and a 2 8. But also it has to do with the fact that there's no real ability for, it seems like, one team to really be dominant over the rest. I mean, like, we have Hulk Smash at 9-1. Wolf Predator 8-2, and then we have the whole clumping at 7-3. So they're just kind of trading wins and losses. Plus, you also have Jason Voorhees there, who is that anomalous 5-5 that has such a high point total that the record doesn't matter. I mean, they won't make it in on record, so they'll have to keep their points up. But that's how we get to 7 on there. So, well, that's actually going to be it for this one. We're going to do this weekly until we get to the playoffs. We'll keep unmasking trends and hit on a few new ones. Like next week, I want to cover which monsters have had the best overall records and which draft slots have worked out best. So that's all for this week, and I will see y'all next week. Ha ha!